Welcome to Retailistic, the official podcast of Coresight Research for October 14th, 2025. This week, CEO Deborah Weinswig welcomes Elias Oxendine. Elias currently leads cybersecurity for Tractor Supply after stints at Yum Brands, General Electric, and U.S. Naval Intelligence. But before we learn about the latest developments in digital threats, let's check in with Isla for her weekly rundown of the new research coming out this week.
Next week, we're rolling out a packed lineup of reports and insights to get you ready for the retail season ahead. We'll start with our main US holiday consumer survey, offering a deep dive into shopper expectations and what they mean for retailers this season. We'll also take you around the globe with coverage of China's Golden Week, plus a look ahead to Diwali and Singles Day and what each means for the retail sector. Along the way, we'll share fresh insights from recent shopping events hosted by Amazon, Target, and Walmart. Then we'll shift gears with our modern store checkout capabilities report, exploring how retailers can reduce friction and drive growth in 2025 and beyond. And finally, we'll tackle one of retail's biggest questions: AI. What's possible, what's still theoretical, and what it all really means for the future of retail. Stay tuned. Next week's insights are all about what's coming, what's changing, and what's next.
Thanks, Isla. Now here's Deborah and Elias.
Elias, thanks so much for joining us today. We're so excited to have you on Retailistic with us. And maybe tell us where you are and what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So Elias Oxendine, and certainly, Deborah, glad to be here with you this morning, this afternoon. And so excited about these opportunities. And so I am currently residing in Nashville, Tennessee, in which I work for Tractor Supply, in which I am the VP responsible for cybersecurity, privacy, and I would just say too, a lot more other additional hats in the short time that I've been here. And so, but been with the company for about 18 months now. And so enjoying Tractor, enjoying Nashville. We've been pleasantly surprised at Nashville, quite honestly.
I mean, Nashville as a city is changing rapidly. I mean, the amount of events, I would say in the next 12 months that are happening there is really changing, is really changing in terms of, I think, the pace. And the city is almost a tech hub is really growing, and that must be exciting for you to see.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I'm doing is trying to establish my network here in a short time I've been here. And you're correct. There are a lot of IT professionals doing a lot of good things here in the city of Nashville. And quite honestly, it still seems to be attracting even more, right, to the area. And so that is what was been pleasantly surprising to me, because before coming to Nashville, I spent the last 18 years in Louisville, Kentucky, right? And so coming here, wasn't quite sure what to expect, but at the same time, I think you're correct. It is trending toward that tech hub as we see more companies, bring their headquarters here, et cetera, so on, but also too, just a number of events, right? And so as I continue to grow my network, I'm surprised by who all I've been connecting with. I've got the CISO at Bridgestone, I got the CISO over at Dollar General, just a number of places in which finding some good camaraderie amongst the technical folks here.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And Tractor Supply is a bit of an enigma for a lot of people. First of all, just the name of the company. I think I remember somebody, actually it's been a lot of somebody's are like, they sell tractors. I'm like, not exactly. So, when you first heard about the company and what you first understood, maybe you can take us kind of from that point to what you know and understand today.
Yeah, sure. I think as I was looking to transition out from Yum, looking for other opportunities, and knew I wanted to leave Louisville. So I had a number of opportunities that were presented to me. Tractor, I knew of Tractor Supply, but I did not know it, wasn't a customer and those kind of things. But I would share with you in the short time that I've been here, it is much more than that, Deborah. If you think about in terms of our life out here strategy and what we're really focused on, I was, like I said, once again, completely surprised. And what really caught me by surprise was the speed and pace in which we move. For some reason, because it was agriculture, I was thinking it's going to be slow and easy days. It is not that. We run at an incredible pace, but even from a technological standpoint, Tractor is always first through the door, right? We are second and third to none, and it shows up in how we do our projects, how we deliver for the business, for our customers, and those things. So the speed and the focus and just the scrappiness in which we operate and those kind of things is what's I've been surprised with now.
I think in terms of my tenure, being very familiar with the company, I'm on third CEO with Hal.
Sure.
And what's interesting and consistent is the kind of pride in trying something that's totally new And it's not even about the kind of score you get on the other side, right? Did we win? Did we lose? It's more about we went through the process and what we learned. And I
Correct.
think the fact that it's a learning organization really changes the whole kind of construct.
Yep.
And I think that unless you spend time there, that's something that took me a while to understand. And once I did, it helped me understand a lot of the decisions that were made.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of that, fail forward and fail fast, right? If you will. And so absolutely correct in terms of that. And so my background where I've been before, whether it be military or GE, is very order, structure, process, right? Controlled how we go about things. And so Tractor's been a unique growth opportunity for me in which I have to change my operating model and just things that, really assimilate to how Tractor operates. But you are correct. The culture here is one of, hey, let's try it, let's do it, and so we can learn from it. If we land it, hit a home run, great. But it is about what we learn in the process and how we continuously get better, for the next opportunity and those kind of things, right? So, but yeah, fail forward but fail fast is how we kind of operate here.
Maybe, you kind of harken back to your experience in the Navy. Can you talk about your decision? Because as I was spending time on your background, it's not the typical kind of progress into the Navy. And so it was one of those, I'm doing all this research. And I'm like, I just have to ask. So maybe if you can share that with our audience.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to do all that, Deborah, right? so, so no, 11 years in the Navy as an intelligence officer, right? And so, that's really how I got my start, into cyber. My very first aircraft carrier got known for being a guy that was, could use IT to solve a number of problems, right? Just think about Intel and what that means in terms of trying to process information, et cetera, to make it meaningful and valuable data. And that's what ultimately resulted in me attending the Navy's postgraduate school in Monterey, California, where I got my master's in information technology management. And so I continue to thrive in that space. And I really saw that come to light when I was stationed in Hawaii, in which I was responsible for 14 aircraft carriers and amphibious ships, meaning equipping them with the appropriate intelligence systems, classified networks, and communications to sustain, 6 months at sea, right? Or doing, operations and those kind of things. And so that's how I got my start into cyber. Why did I leave the Navy? I had a young family and I had a young son. And so when I was working up for deployments, my son understood Dad's not coming home. It made it rough for him, which made it rough for my wife, which made it rough for me. And she's like, you got to find something else different to do. And I said, yes, ma'am, I got it. And if you followed my background, you would know it's like, wait a minute. You went from all that to trying to convince moms about processed cheese sauce. Yes, I went to work for Kraft Foods as a brand manager for the Cheese Whiz product. But long story short, it just
Which I
was not for.
actually, I'm embarrassed to say, I think we have 3 jars in our cupboards. I was not expecting to say that, nor is
Okay.
anything.
You know what? So I wouldn't go too loud with that, right? So, but Cheese Whiz, I'll just say it's a good product, but it's got a long shelf life. Um, having done that, I wanted to get back into IT and those kind of things, and so I was very fortunate to find a way to get back into IT, but landed in Louisville, Kentucky, working for a number of companies there, right, and spent the last 18 years there. But the Navy was a great start for me. Enjoyed it. I learned a lot of the concepts from leadership that I apply today in everyday life here, where I've been, and even at Tractor, right? So, but yeah, that's what the Navy. Navy was great. But to your point, the order, structure, process is which I kind of learned and leaned better for. But then also too, spent the last 9 years at GE. Same thing, order, structure, process. So GE was a good fit for me for transitioning from the military to corporate America.
Now I know I like you so much. So my father was also in the military. He was in the Army and in intelligence. And then he
Yeah.
went on to study physics and more. And he was like one of the most disciplined people. I mean, every day you're gonna laugh. I probably have some around. I actually probably have like a whole. Oh, I literally. I'm sharing way too much. I have an entire box of 3x5 cards
Okay.
because my father. I literally. I won't even show. But like I literally go through like every day because that like growing up, starting at like age 5, we would write down our schedule for the day and he would check it. And then at night when he came home, he would make sure that we had done everything. And if it took us more or less time, he'd ask us why. And
Yeah.
so when I went to college, I will say that my father was such a huge asset. And I would call him every morning when I started. And I said, this is what's on my plate today. This is how I'm thinking about spending my time, because going back to, right, your time is so valuable. And I think the military does such an amazing job of helping you think about how you're spending your time, whether it's strategic or tactical.
Yep.
And that really, I think, sets you up for an amazing kind of lifetime of success is, the more that you lean into it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Another common point with your father, you said physics, same, right? I had a childhood dream. I wanted to be an astronaut, right? Clearly I'm not, right? So, zigzag, and those things. But yeah, from the disciplinary aspect, 100% there, Deborah. It shows up in my day, in my life, how I operate now, right? So I'm an early riser. I'm a morning person. Yeah, I'm up super early, hitting the gym, getting everything started, to make sure I get set for the day. And then everything else kind of falls in order from that point. I plan my day, what I plan to accomplish. If you ever want to see me lose my marbles,
Mhm.
just rub my schedule, my calendar, and you will see some things like, wow, Elias, I never knew you were this high strung. Ah, yeah, you didn't know. Now you know.
I was very much that way until I started to spend a lot of time in Asia, right?
Mm,
I mean, at the end of the day, everyone's like, there's no such thing as jet lag. Well, I think there is, but you're just so jet lagged all the time, you don't really realize it. And so
sure.
when you start to like that becomes your way of life, you become first of all, you just let some of the smaller things fall by the wayside because you can only control so much. And
Right.
so that was because until that point, I think I had been very structured. And, it was funny growing up, my father was also very much about kind of being an entrepreneur and whatnot. And so when I was 10, I had like 3 different paper routes and they were
Okay.
all in apartment buildings. And so my dad would wake me up at 5 and it was great. I mean, it was great. I ended up being an athlete, but you're running up and down the stairs. And of course,
Okay.
right, like having 3 paper routes, right? Like I got my college, if you will, tuition earned by the time I was like 12. But he would be, he wanted to just make sure I was safe. So he would drive me. I mean, so he's getting up at 5 with me.
Wow.
And yeah. And he would wait outside, right? And make sure I was okay. Then he'd drive me home. Then he'd go to work, right? Then he's working like a 12-hour day or whatever. And so but like having that as your roots,
Yes.
it was amazing to see. And just, and he never kind of like skipped a beat. And so knowing that as kind of your DNA, can you talk about your time at GE? I had a lot of friends who worked there and just
Yeah.
knew them to grow a lot professionally while they were there.
Yeah. GE, I think it was, once again, it was a good, place for me coming out post the military, right? There was an interesting statistic at the time that said for those of us that spent more than 10 years, active duty, 80% would fail at their first job, in the corporate America, right? Because you have to unlearn that military leadership style and structure and those kind of things. GE felt like home for me, quite honestly, right? Just be very transparent. My first office was a converted broom closet that was painted gray like the ship. And I was the only one in the office. And my manager at the time was very apologetic about the setup. Said, "Hey, I'm sorry. We'll get you to an office with a window." And I was like, I look in there. I was like, "It's only one desk?" She says, "Yeah." I said, "It's just me in here?" She says, "Yeah." I said, "What are you complaining about? This is great. I'm back on the ship." Right. And so, but GE, to your point, you're structured and organized in those things. Once again, I felt very accustomed in being like home, like basically going back to GE, and
Mhm.
particularly because of how GE operated. But then you had like its Six Sigma program, right? And so everyone goes through that process. And I am such a process oriented person. It just kind of felt natural to me. And then how that worked out for me in that regards. But GE was also very good about growing and grooming leaders. And so what I found at GE is that because of my background and because of experience working professional, I got exposed and took on a lot of projects that normally someone relatively new to GE would not have the opportunity to do. So that for me, you want to talk about some trials and tribulations while trying to transition from the military to corporate America. But I thrived in that environment, Deborah, because of the structure, because, they have more acronyms than we have in the military, right? So I was like, this is great. And once you know them all, you crack the code, you start speaking GE lingo and
Yeah.
you're there, right? And so, but it was a great opportunity for what it exposed me to. And it just reinforced a lot of that process structure and that discipline you're talking about. Similar to your father, the Navy has got me conditioned to working, 14, 16-hour days, right? I only survive on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And so, but I can go in and pull a full day, most effective in the morning. If you catch me in the afternoon, I tell my team all the time, do not ask me to make a heavy decision after 3 o'clock. I will always punt till the next day, until which I know I'm sharpest there from that perspective. But no, GE was a great springboard for me to get in and get back into IT and cyber and those things. But yes, the structure, how GE operated, how GE grew leaders and developed leaders. That was the best thing for me, I would say, post the craft experience.
And then at Yum, you were the CISO, so a lot of questions to unravel there. But how was that transition? Not quite cheese whiz, but and
Mm,
then how have you seen the role of this? I mean, we've seen unbelievable change, much more than I think I even expected in that role. So can
yeah.
you talk about that transition and then just what that role meant, maybe even when you got there and when you left?
Yeah, and so before I went to Yum, I did do a brief stint, 5 years of Brown-Forman, right? So hopefully folks understand Brown-Forman's alcohol and spirits company, right? Jack Daniels, with Reserve, and those things. So I led that program, but then I was approached about the opportunity at Yum. And so with Yum, the particular challenge there, the other places I had been working as a CISO, I always could mandate, hey, here's what you're going to do, here's how you're going to operate. At Yum, 98% of their business model is franchisee.
Mm.
Right. And so from that perspective, I cannot, mandate and dictate what these folks must do at their stores. Right. I can help market, sell, and influence. But now, mind you, you already know my experience at Kraft. So, I couldn't market and sell Cheese Whiz, but I can market and sell security strategies and those kind of things. And so coming into the Yum role, like I said, the thing that challenged me there was, okay, how do I influence these franchisees to implement some of these security strategies, tools, et cetera, so on? Because you got to remember, from the franchisee perspective, those are lean margins. And they're focused on what's going to help me sell more chicken, pizza, or tacos, right? This does not contribute to that. So, Elias, why should I do this, right? So I came with a standards versus a systems, a services approach, right? And what that means is I had a list of services we had available at Yum that if you subscribe to those services, you were fine, got it. If you did not subscribe to those services, then whatever service you used, it had to be compliant with our standard. Right. So that's why you had that services versus a standards approach. That worked. I did pretty well in that perspective. But I think to your point, Deborah, how has the role changed when I got there and then where it is now? I was a COVID hire. I joined the company in June 2020. And so from that perspective, like all the other folks that were out there, big shift into e-commerce and those things, right? So it really went from a traditional kind of security program to how did I work to enable that as the developers were working on e-com, mobile apps and those kind of things. How did we get security embedded in those processes, shift left further up into that. And so, like I said, the big change that I saw was coming into the organization that it went from a traditional security program to how do we run faster to keep up with the developers to make sure they're putting good code out there and making sure that every transaction is safe, secure, and sound.
I mean, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about putting good code out there. And as we've entered the world of Gen AI and now agentic, right? I was sitting with an executive the other day, and this is from a Coresight advisory perspective or Coresight research advisory perspective. When we go into someone's office, especially when I'm with senior folks, I'll just kind of pull up a chair and just say, oh, just why don't you show me how you're using it and like your day to day. And yes, it's usually like CEO, president or whatnot. And I was watching, and I will say I was probably even starting to sweat, even though I'm usually quite cool. Right. I knew that the organization had walled off ChatGPT, and this person's popping up Perplexity and Gemini and Claude. And I'm like, just sitting there, and I'm like, I'm playing dumb, like, oh, like, what do you upload there or whatever? And he's like, oh, like earnings release. And I'm like, oh, no, no. And then you're like, okay, so, right, like the CISO starts to become, right, your best friend because there's obviously some training that needs to happen, but it needs to be kind of very structured. And, you have someone who's using some of these new tools they're changing. Hey, in the last week, we had 3 massive announcements. So
Right.
I don't know where we want to say people are sophisticated or not in their usage. It's just like, you feel like you're trying to like hang on and like not
Yes.
left behind. I feel like I'm on like a speedboat and I'm just trying to make sure I don't fall off and like what I'm finding personally is, right, I'm a knowledge-based kind of thinker. I'm spending it used to be kind of like 90 minutes, and now it's literally like 2.5 hours a day, and I'm just trying to stay up with things. I don't even feel like I'm not ahead. I'm
Sure.
just And so because, right, we're trying to make sure that we're a step ahead of our clients in terms of just protecting the house. And so how are you educating people internally and even, right, and it's the people at HQ, it's the people in the stores, and then those who are interacting, right, with your environment.
Yeah. So a couple of things, couple of thoughts on that. I was cringing with you when you said you're sitting with this executive. They're just uploading these things up into the different, LLMs that are outside what their enterprise, Gen AI platform is. And so for us initially, when I joined Tractor, those were all blocked. Right. You did not get unfettered access to those, right? And so you did have to go through a process to kind of get that information out, want access to those sites. Once you had that, we did at the time, we did not have the appropriate security controls in place. But now, Deborah, we do, right?
Yeah.
So we use a combination of CASB along with DOP, particularly if anyone is trying to use anything that's outside of Tractor's control, what we do, deem to be sanctioned, right, and approved. And so what was interesting is that we were able to assess, hey, what AI sites are people going to the most and using the most? And I would tell you what surprised us, it was Grammarly. Right. And so this is before we had Copilot enabled
Yep.
in the environment. Right. And so we pulled this back. I'm like, okay, Grammarly. I'm like, okay, yeah, yes, people were visiting Claude, Gemini, and these things, but it wasn't as much as we expected. And so it was Grammarly. But what we have done since I came on board is just look, we will continue to control what's approved and what's not approved. Right. So we would for that perspective. What we have done now is we've entered into an agreement, with OpenAI for ChatGPT. Right. So to your point, we're operating within a secure bubble within their framework and their environment and those kind of things, which is great. That works out for us just fine from that perspective. But back in August, and as you know, Glenn is the VP responsible for AI and machine learning. Glenn once we locked in that agreement with OpenAI, we went on a crusade to eventually get it exposed and shared to everyone. But we want to provide training. And so we have generated an acceptable use policy for AI, right? And trying to be very simple there, Deborah. Here are some simple do's and don'ts, even providing examples to where people understand, hey, okay, here's kind of what I can do and I can't do. But, the true Tractor way, we had a town hall back in August, and it was kind of the AI takeover. So you've got Glenn and I up there. Glenn has all the fun stuff, right? He's getting everybody excited. We're going on GPT 5, these things, and then he sends me up to talk about do's and don'ts. I'm like, I'm going to be the buzzkill, bud. What are you talking about? That's not what I want to do. So, but continue to educate them on, like I said, extra use, et cetera, so on. The next thing that we're doing in the next upcoming weeks is to introduce to the organization the AI Governance Council and what we're all about, right? So governance is a big thing here to make sure that, yes, AI is a great tool and these things, right? But we want to make sure that we're using it in a safe, and protected kind of way and those things. And so the principle behind that is to educate to the employees, our team members, that look, if you have a business case or an idea, we want you to bring it to this AI Governance Council, right? So this is really about practicing and exercising responsible AI. And so that Governance Council is a cross-functional team that I happen to chair. But as a business case comes through, everyone knows what hat and what lens they are to look at this business case through. We take it through a rubric, we get scores, we meet weekly, and then we'll come back the following week to render a decision on it and those kind of things, right? So the education is through the policy. It is also through introducing to the organization who the council is and what we're for. And once again, if you have an idea, where to go. The next step in this education and awareness, though, Deborah, is we've got to get with, some type of quick training videos. How do we make this fun, right? Gone are the traditional ways of, and I'm partly to blame here, but the boring security, video, emails, right? And those things. How do you think about how people learn today? For me, the first thing I do is I'm going on to YouTube somewhere, right? And then also I'm looking at, is this video longer than 2 minutes? If it's longer than 2 minutes, I'm going somewhere else, right? Or I'm going to ChatGPT. So, hey, give me this watered down version of it. So the next thing for us is how do we make that training fun and exciting and in short bursts and clips of meaningful information? So I've got a new director who's joined Tractor, and my challenge has been to him is how do we know if our training program is effective or not? How are we measuring that? How are we making sure that it lands and it sticks? So long way to answer your question, but Yes, we are introducing and educating through policies, making sure people understand we have a governance process in place. Here's who the council is. The next step really is around education. How do we, those short bursts, how do we get fun and exciting and not that, Charlie Brown and wah. No, people got to walk away. It's like, wow, I understand now how I can use this tool.
No, I think it's so interesting because this week I was invited to be part of OpenAI's Innovation Forum. And so we meet on a fairly regular basis. And so they had Lucas Kaiser. I mean, I have to, a bit of a fangirl, right? He was one of the original authors in 2017, right? Of Attention is All You Need. And it was, first of all, it was interesting. He had similar intonation as I do. And so, first of all, I'm like, people will be like, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm kind of from all over. I moved a lot with my dad. So, but I was interested in listening to him because of that. But to your point, he's talking about snails and flowers. And I'm watching his and it's not super, it's very simplistic slides and there's movement. And so at Coresight, we were told that if, these days with, you can call it goldfish brain or squirrel brain or whatever you want, but that you need to have some kind of movement about every 8 seconds or you're starting to lose people. And
Right.
I felt like, he had that under, right? Like he really thought about that, but it was an hour, which felt like 5 minutes. And it was the way that he approached the materials. And I came away and I really, my mind, I was playing it over. I was like, I really did learn a lot. And it's interesting because in our AI council, we're doing kind of monthly training, but we've been asked by a lot of boards to do board training. And I think board members can sit for a long time and they can ingest a lot. And so, but at the end of the day, right, this is a topic that we want it to be, we want them to not have to go back and study it, right? That they because of how quickly it's changing. And so we've started to look into some of the training materials. And to your point, right, having kind of maybe a 1 hour session, but then having, right, kind of some of these shorter, 2 minutes, 3 minutes kind of videos to go back and remind yourself what you learned. Because I think right now, and especially in an organization the size of Tractor Supply, where everyone learns in different ways, that's a lot. And what was the, if you will, what was the stimulants to put in place the AI Governance Council? Because I think you're very early on that, but I absolutely think it's the right way to go.
Yeah, 100% on the training. Like you said, you got to figure out how people can retain it, right? And so, and we're going to try that out. That struggle is real, and we'll let you know how successful we've been with that, right? And so, but in terms of the AI Governance Council, what kind of was the premise that brought that together? Early days, and Rob is always a strategic thinker. He is just always on point, and the things he sees coming up, it's like, hey, AI is becoming more of a thing now. So therefore, this kind of becomes a potential risk for Tractor if we don't put a process and some structure around it. And so because I am responsible for IT risk, AI, same thing. Hey, Elias, this kind of plays in your space, in your wheelhouse. At that time, when I joined, we had Tractors already had been using AI, right? We used it for Hey Guru, we used it for Tractor Vision and those kind of things. And so it really was, we didn't have a lot of use cases that was coming to IT for review. A lot of the business cases were originating within IT. But what we found out with a larger, announcement about OpenAI, as more of our team members start to know about it, we had a number of ideas that were starting to surface. And people were like, hey, so I got this great idea that's going to help. Where do I go? What's the process? And those kind of things. And so I think it really was Rob's, foresight, Deborah, that brought it together to get established, because we started seeing more of our business functional leaders bringing thoughts and ideas to the table, right? And I would tell you how was, the catalyst, a lot of this, right? So Hal was doing, he's a techie guy and he's into a lot of things. And so he was bringing some of that back, I think, to his staff, a leadership team, and saying, hey, we got to get in front of this. And so when that was done, we saw the ideas start to come. And therefore, we had to have a process which we could channel, govern these things and make sure we're doing what's right and best for Tractor.
Well, and as you're also opening up kind of the proverbial Pandora's box, but this idea that people have permission to think differently and to think about how to kind of push Tractor forward. I think that is what, I've seen Hal do that at several organizations. And to have a CEO with that kind of background, but also that kind of interest and curiosity, I think that that's also really at this point, right? Tractor Supply is really a leader in this area. And I think that, as we think about the physical stores and then online unified commerce, however you want to put it all together.
Sure.
How do you think about kind of edge compute at this point?
Yeah, fair question. And so that that's one of the things that kind of keeps me up in these kind of things,
Yeah.
right? And so what we're primarily trying to do is, to your point, keep everything at the edge and safe, right?
Mhm.
And a couple of ways in which we're approaching that is we're using a combo of a tech stack to kind of make sure we have those things in place, Deborah. And this is where I mentioned before, this is a combination of DLP technology in addition with CASB, right? And so the reason why the DLP piece is important because we're talking about email, we're talking about endpoint, but then obviously people are starting to use, the cloud, the SaaS products and solutions from that perspective. And so we're taking a converged approach, if you will, and trying to drive that and make that work in that standpoint. But still early days for us in that capacity, in that light, but we're on our journey, on our way there. And so, but then to make sure am I answering your question correctly, I'll make sure that I'm speaking to that a little bit. If not, then, explain it a little bit more and I can hopefully come back with a stronger response.
Yeah, no, first of all, well, that's super helpful. But then in physical stores, right, where especially during
Yeah.
these periods, right, you can have challenges with just the amount of bandwidth.
Yep.
So how do you look at kind of compute at the edge and really powering the stores? Because I think over time, right, we're just going to see more and more getting done at the
Yep.
stores.
Yeah. So what we're doing there, and part of our project plan for 2026 is we're looking to upgrade, the wireless, the networks in the stores. Right now, today, when we have our leadership fundamentals and
Mhm.
we have store managers come on site, and we as a leadership team go down and engage with them for dinner and these kind of things. One of the biggest things we always hear in this case, Deborah, it is about, connectivity in stores, low network performance and those kind of things, right? And so we are at the point in time now where we are investing to upgrade that network to support much more activity we're doing at the store. If you think about it, we're transitioning into a single device. And so with that single device, we're adding a lot more applications and these things. And so what I often share with my peers is that, look, it's almost like, building a house. You can build up above ground as much as possible, but if you don't have that solid foundation that's going to support those apps that's right across that network, that wireless piece, those kind of things, it is doomed, to not be successful. And so we are investing in that to improve that infrastructure, those things at the stores going forward in 2026.
So it's funny, right? I was in Nashville a few weeks ago and had an amazing opportunity to be on stage with Hal. And on my flight back to New York, I was on a United Airlines like regional jet, and I'm sitting in the, you're waiting to board, and all of a sudden I get this like on my laptop, right? Like I really thought I'd been hacked. Like, be prepared for this amazing onboard experience. And I'm like, what is going on? So my screen is blue, like it's like the color of my shirt. So I get on and I flip on my laptop to get on the Wi-Fi, and it's that same exact message. I'm like, what's going on? So it was Starlink. And so
Yes. Yeah.
so
Yep.
United has Starlink between Nashville and New York. I'm telling you, I'm fast. I got like 10 hours of work done in 2 hours. I've never experienced anything like it. Was almost outer body. And I'm
Yep.
like, I'm going to go back and forth between Nashville and New York all the time. But you start to think, I will say it was one of those things I got home and I couldn't turn my brain off. Because when you start to think about what you can do, well, first of all, I've thought about many things, but how can you hack yourself, right? Because if you can get that much work done in that period of time, that
Yep.
was amazing. Then I started to worry about, right, if you're working at that speed, what is the other side of that? But if you start to think about the physical stores, and I know what a lot of, kind of store managers and district and regional, what they often talk about is how, right, you have this completely different experience online and offline. But to me, once we start to see more of that in the stores, your in-store experience, I think, would actually be better
Better.
and more technologically charged. I mean,
Yep.
problem with this is why, I never thought that e-commerce was going to be more than let's say 30%. And yes, I understand at Williams Sonoma and Crate and Barrel, right? It's in the 40s and Wayfair,
Sure.
but because it's 2D, right? And here we still don't have a lot of live streaming, right? Because that's 3D. So in a 2D world, right, where our products are 3D, stores win, right?
Correct. Yep.
And if we can get the bandwidth and we can, I think, and I mean, the thing I've always loved about Tractor Supplies is completely experiential, right? I'm like, I was in there with my team. We had come and done a presentation. Oh my gosh, it might have been back in 2016 at HQ. And I'm in the stores and there's little baby chickens and stuff. I'm like, this is the coolest thing
Yes.
ever, right? I'm like, and I was like, can I take the baby chickens home with me, right? This, and
Correct.
start to have, right, like there becomes this really, I've never had I've never had it in any other retailer. You start to build this interesting bridge between the physical store
Yep.
and yourself. And there's like a magic, I'm sure it's much more kind of thought out, but I do think between, right, the loyalty program, right, where we've had
Right.
the pleasure of seeing all that develop over time, it's amazing what's happened. So if you think about where we are today
Right.
and where we're going, what from a kind of security perspective are you thinking of? And because things are changing at such a rapid pace, how do you stay in front of it?
Yeah. So we have and engage with a number of partners and how we bring these things to life, right? And so we don't do this all by ourselves, right? And so we have a number of partners in which we work with, and what we're doing there, Deborah's pushing them to figure out, hey, how do we ensure that we're driving secure, practices, connections, connectivities at the store, physical store level? Because to your point, the majority of our revenue for Tractor is coming from the stores, even though we see digital increasing. It's all about how do we still continue to maximize that in-store experience. And so I guess the short way to answer without getting to a lot of details and revealing too much is that we do have partners in which we're working with in terms of how do we get there together to stay in front of it, right? Because our team by ourselves, we just can't stay in front of it. So it is often done with key strategic partners to make sure that we're working together on how do we do that, right? And so I will share with you some of the partners we're working with in terms of getting bandwidth and connectivity out to these stores. We're seeing a lot of new cool stuff come to the forefront. And so when we go through these EBCs and we're having these conversations, and the EBCs will often be Rob and I, but
Mhm.
Rob would kind of share his vision, what he's thinking. And then it's very interesting to see how our partners come to life and say, hey, we can help you with that. And here's how we do that. So once that initial conversation, that bridge is done, then that's where I'm following up with my counterpart on that partner side to really get into the details. Okay, help me walk through this. And I'm going to bring some of my smart folks to talk to your smart folks to make sure that, hey, can we do this? Can we do this safe and secure, but still give the store the network connectivity and bandwidth that it needs to bring this to life, right? And so that's kind of how that works out. But I have a lot of occasional meetings with my partners, Deborah, to stay on top in front of these things and see what they're bringing to the table to help us on this journey.
It's really interesting that you brought that up. So we hosted 8 startups in a friend of mine's office who runs an M&A boutique.
Yep.
And I've known him for 20 plus years. And it was so interesting how different our questions were, right? Mine from a research background, his from a banking background. And so he asked each of them, like, who are your partners? How are they getting you to market? And I was like, the partners are bringing you to market? And he looks at me and he's like, in an AI world, he said the relationship between kind of, partner and kind of end consumer, if you will, is completely changing. And what
Yeah.
you as the buyer are expecting from your partner, he said that's totally changed in 2025, and he expects that to change even more. And so what we're starting to see, which once again, I would never have expected, that great partners, they care so much about the relationship that
Yep.
they will go out and seek great startups, great technology. And when you're then buying, if you will, that technology, you're doing it through them so they can ensure a great experience. It's not that they're in no way trying to limit your relationship with the startup or the tech company. They
Sure.
just want to make sure that you have, and I said, that's something I never would have expected, because obviously it creates a lot of friction and they seem to be like, oh, this
Yeah.
is easy. But I guess going back to that's where some of the magic is. But
Yep.
what, in your opinion, right? To me, that's a very big change. And I
Right.
do understand the past, right? A lot of consulting firms, right? They served in that role, but now we're seeing it's more and more your technology partners.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the VoIP solution that we're introducing into our stores, right?
Mhm.
And so through our partnership with T-Mobile, they have a company they brought on, it's called Dialpad.
Mhm.
And Dialpad is helping us deliver that VoIP solution in store. And so to your point, it's very interesting how the relationship started off, because at first it was their standard out of the box solution. But what we've done is we've kind of tractorized it, right? So to your point,
Mhm.
as we've gotten into the conversations and discussions with T-Mobile and Dialpad, we have asked for things that kind of make it fit better for Tractor. But then to your point, it is a technological, partnership at this point. It's not, and I will tell you, there isn't a lot of friction there, Deborah.
Yep.
We have stood up a top to top, just recently between Tractor, T-Mobile, and Dialpad to talk about current state of projects, where we're going, what are they bringing new to the table, what are Tractor's requirements? Hey, it's great, we got it in, but guess what? It's going to evolve, right? So how do we continue to bring to their attention what we're looking for? And then just talking about too, are there any roadblocks that are preventing us from bringing these things to life? And so we're seeing some good returns there on this. We are in the process of rolling out the UCAS, the Dialpad solution, to a number of stores for Q4, and then we're going to go a full push into 2026 and 27. So, but it is very much a technology partnership. It is not your traditional, hey, give requirements and those kind of things, because the development work they're doing, it moves so quickly. And in order to get that technology out to the stores, I mean, Deborah, we had ASM, people got a little bit of taste of what was coming. People were standing in line at the network table and asking, hey, when can we get on this new solution, right? These current phones, right? They're a little old hardware, those kind of things are having issues. And so people are very excited about this technology, but the success there is, I tell the team all the time, it's one team, one fight. We are not three different companies. We are one, and pushing to make sure we deliver success for the source.
What's so interesting about that as well, if you think about it, or I've thought about this a lot, when you're working with a technology partner that's not charging you, right, consulting fees, then
Right.
you as the buyer, you're really pushing, and I mean that in a very positive way, on
Yes.
more information, because you're not like thinking about the dollars and cents that are being added up. And so I believe that this is a much better way to achieve success
Yep.
than what we saw, let's say, in 24. I feel like this is a big change. And I think that these relationships, and once again, removing a lot of that friction in terms of, okay, I've got like all of these different contracts, right? If you're doing everything through kind of like one mouth, I just think that this is going to start to really change how decisions are made, how success is driven, and ultimately how employees, customers, and shareholders feel about things. And so I feel like we're on the brink of something quite new. And it is interesting, going back to the beginning of our conversation, just how Tractor is really leaning into that and almost driving it.
Yeah, I mean, and once again, Tractor is, we're always first to the door, right? I hate to use a military analogy, but yeah, we're always first to the door. We're not second or third to anyone. So we will push on our partners, and that's a good term, and you mean it in a very positive way. It's like, look, here's the need that we have, and our expectation is that you're going to either go find someone, startup who can bring it to light, or you guys already have this in the works. And so this is my first time trying to work through that, experience that here at Tractor. And once again, I'll be quite honest, I am very surprised at the pace and the speed. Now, yes, we have, there's some, give and take, right? Some slow down and speed up. But I do think, to your point, we are doing something that's new here. And like I said, we're seeing very positive results. We have worked with our partner, starting off was kind of, start slow. But
Yep.
once we got into the rhythm, how we're going to operate and work together as a team, and to your point, we're bringing requirements to them all the time. And what's happening is, because we're not thinking about the cost on it, they're actually coming back and flipping those requirements very quickly. We'll take it out to a set number of pilot stores. And, hey, this works, change this, tweak that. So that is allowing us to give a level of speed and bringing those things to light. And so, but yeah, we are very assertive in pushing them. And as Tractor, we have high expectations, right? And so we're challenging our partners to live up to those. And so far, we're seeing that.
Well, as you mentioned that, I do think that is, if I were to think about some of the characteristics, right, I've always looked at Tractor as a learning organization, and one that has very high levels of expectations. And so it's interesting if you combine the two of those with great tech or great tech partners, and
Yep.
right, employees, customers, shareholders, all that, right, your opportunity in this environment, I think it really kind of plays to your strengths.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we're really waiting to see what that looks like, in the return, right? And so right now with the VoIP solution we're rolling out, it really is, how do we take those team members in stores that are having, challenges and issues with the network, with the phone system, right? And just the fact that we have so many people asking for that, and then the positive feedback responses we're getting, people are like, oh, this is great. I love this. What took you so long, right? I'm like, hey, we're coming, right? We're getting there, right? And those things. But to your point, yeah, because think about it. If we make sure that team member shows up, the last thing we want them to do is worry about phone issues, right? We want them focused on the customer, everything the Tractor is known for, et cetera, and so on. And so through this partnership, and to your point, the combination of both of these things, it is positioning us to actually realize those and bring those things to fruition. So very early with the VoIP solution, but we're getting it out there. And so we are well on our way. And for me, I love getting positive, my team and I, we love getting positive feedback from the stores. Because right now, if something's not working, trust me, we hear about it.
Hear about it. All right, we're
Yeah.
going to go into our very quick lightning round. So I'll ask you 5
Okay.
questions. You can take a pass if you want on any of them as well, or answer a different question.
Oh,
Always what we were
okay.
told in our media training. So number 1, the most underrated cyber skill.
Communication. And what I mean by that, the ability to take tech and then speak in regular business terms to where your audience can understand it. Know your audience, communicate in their language.
It's a great one. A cybersecurity myth that refuses to die.
I would say one, people I still see try to practice defense in depth, which is A-okay. But that's an old legacy kind of thought when it comes to protecting the networking nowadays, because people have a tendency, they just parachute in over the top. And so you got to not only worry about what's in front of you, 2D, you got to worry about what's coming in from a different perspective as well.
I love that. What will define retail cyber resilience 5 years from now?
I would say for us, the resilience piece, the way, if you think about how that would manifest and show up, is that are we able to maintain our customers' trust, right? Which means the systems are up, operationals, privacy's in place. They're not worried about their data being leaked out and those kind of things, right? So I would say trust. If we can maintain that high trust, then everything else falls in place.
The privacy is a very important one. I think that's a very good point to bring up. Thank you. If you
Yep.
could, number 4, and we've got one left after this, if you could
Okay.
redesign cybersecurity education for retail employees, what would you teach first?
Wow. It would, I guess you go with traditional phishing and those kind of things. The reason I'm struggling with that, I think there's a lot more based on how threat actors are operating today and getting into organizations, but it's phishing, but it's also browsing safety as well. I would do a combination of both of those. Deborah, so give me 2 for 1. Let me do the safe browsing along with the phishing.
I have to double click on that because we recently had, I mean, I was able to tell, but I would say it. I read things a few times. So we
Sure.
turned up and I was like, I said to the tech team, I'm like, everything says like external, and the cautious, you're replying to people and it says cautious. I'm like, okay, turn it down. So also getting that right balance, I think is really can be tough.
Yeah, the only reason I say the safe browsing piece is because it's not just phishing, which these things are happening. You got all these pop-ups, people go to these websites, etc. So water hole attacks and those things, right? So there's a 1-2 combo there. I think it needs to be trained and communicated out to people.
Okay, all right. Last one. Biggest misconception about your role?
The role has expanded so much, right? I've got like a divisional CTO, CIO, and those kind of things, right? There is, because of what I have right now, the one piece people automatically assume is that I own infrastructure as well, right? On cloud, on-prem and cloud, right? I don't. That's with Glenn and those kind of things, right? So, but I don't know. I've got to come back and think about that one. And so I haven't given that one thought, but yeah.
I think what we've seen from from a kind of cyber and that perspective,
I got it.
Exactly to your point though. I think the physical, right, the infrastructure side versus that's where there is often a misperception.
Yep.
And because so many companies we know, right, they were on-prem, they went to cloud, now they're going back to on-prem, so
Correct.
more hybrid.
Yep.
And so who owns what? Like that's where I think it gets confusing from the outside and the inside.
It does, because with the role change, right? And so it's just kind of, hey, what fits, what makes more sense to fit here? But you hit right where I was going to go. I'm also mistaken that I own physical security as well, too. And so I have to tell people all the time, says, look, yes, and I think it's because of the military background, right? So they automatically just make that connection. Hey, the physical presence there. So, and like, now there are chief security roles out there that are responsible for both cyber and physical. But yes, I had someone about a month ago brought to my attention, hey, there's a white van sitting outside, in the circle there. And I'm like, okay, did you call, did you call, Barbara and get physical security on? It's like, well, don't you own physical too? And I was like, I could if the organization gave that to me, but that's not my role. Well, you're security. I said, well, I'm cyber security, not physical. So yes, if you hit it right in the head, yeah, that is the one misconception I would say that's out there, Deborah, is that I also own physical in addition to cyber.
Yeah, no, Elias, this is amazing. I could talk to you all day because it feels like it was 5 minutes. And I think we just touched the absolute surface. I mean, you really are such a leader in our industry because you've got this amazing background. You've continued to, I think, push yourself and challenge yourself. And the impact that you've had at every organization and that you're still having today is truly it's world renowned, and we just want to thank you for joining us. This was such a special time for us. Thank you.
All right, Deborah, once again, thank you for the time and for the interest in these things. So I'm glad to be here and be part of this activity. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah, and thank you for joining us. Coresight Research serves our members in multiple ways with cutting-edge research, leadership forums, data resources, strategic advisory services, and more. Visit us at Coresight.com to learn how a Coresight Research membership can accelerate your success. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week.